Hi, this is Mike. This is Robert Alter's translation of Genesis chapter 30. And Rachel saw that she had borne no children to Jacob, and Rachel was jealous of her sister. And she said to Jacob, "Give me sons, for if you don't, I am a dead woman." And Jacob was incensed with Rachel, and he said, "Am I instead of God who has denied you fruit of the womb?" And she said, "Here is my slave girl Bilhah. Come to bed with her, that she may give birth on my knees, so that I too shall be built up through her." And she gave him Bilhah her slave girl as a wife, and Jacob came to bed with her. And Bilhah conceived, and bore Jacob a son. And Rachel said, "God granted my cause. Yes, he heard my voice, and he gave me a son." Therefore she called his name Dan. And Bilhah, Rachel's slave girl, conceived again, and bore a second son to Jacob. And Rachel said, "In awesome grapplings I have grappled with my sister, and yes, I won out." And she called his name Naphtali. And Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, and she took Zilpah, her slave girl, and gave her to Jacob as a wife. And Zilpah, Leah's slave girl, bore Jacob a son. And Leah said, "Good luck has come." And she called his name Gad. And Zilpah, Leah's slave girl, bore a second son to Jacob. And Leah said, "What good fortune, for the girls have acclaimed me fortunate." And she called his name Asher. And Reuben went out during the wheat harvest, and found mandrakes in the field, and brought them to Leah his mother. And Rachel said to Leah, "Give me, pray, some of the mandrakes of your son." And she said, "Is it not enough that you have taken my husband, and now you would take the mandrakes of my son?" And Rachel said, "Then let him lie with you tonight, in return for the mandrakes of your son." And Jacob came from the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, "With me you will come to bed, for I have clearly hired you with the mandrakes of my son." And he lay with her that night. And God heard Leah, and she conceived, and bore Jacob a fifth son. And Leah said, "God has given me my wages, because I gave my slave girl to my husband." And she called his name Issachar. And Leah conceived again, and bore a sixth son to Jacob. And Leah said, "God has granted me a goodly gift. This time my husband will exalt me, for I have borne him 6 sons." And she called his name Zebulun. And afterward she bore a daughter, and she called her name Dinah. And God remembered Rachel, and God heard her, and he opened her womb, and she conceived and bore a son. And she said, "God has taken away my shame." And she called his name Joseph, which is to say, "May Yahweh add me another son." And it happened when Rachel bore Joseph, that Jacob said to Laban, "Send me off, that I may go to my place and to my land. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, that I may go. For you know the service that I have done you." And Laban said to him, "If pray I have found favor in your eyes, I have prospered, and Yahweh has blessed me because of you." And he said, "Name me your wages, that I may give them." And he said to him, "You know how I have served you, and how your livestock has fared with me. For the little you had before my time has swollen to a multitude, and Yahweh has blessed you on my account. And now when shall I too provide for my household?" And he said, "What shall I give you?" And Jacob said, "You need give me nothing, if you will do this thing for me. Let me go back and herd your flocks and watch them. I shall pass through all your flocks today, to remove from them every spotted and speckled animal, and every dark-colored sheep, and the speckled and spotted among the goats. That will be my wages. Then my honesty will bear witness for me in the days to come, when you go over my wages. Whatever is not spotted and speckled among the goats, and dark-colored among the sheep, shall be accounted stolen by me." And Laban said, "Let it be just as you say." And he removed on that day the spotted and speckled he-goats, and all the brindled and speckled she-goats, every one that had white on it, and every dark-colored one among the sheep, and he gave them over to his sons. And he put 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob herded the remaining flocks of Laban. And Jacob took himself moist rods of poplar and almond and plane tree, and peeled white strips in them, laying bare the white on the rods. And he stood the rods he had peeled into the troughs, in the water channels from which the flocks came to drink, opposite the flocks, which went into heat when they came to drink. And the flocks went into heat at the rods, and the flocks bore brindled, spotted, and speckled young. And the sheep Jacob kept apart. He placed them facing the spotted and all the dark-colored in Laban's flocks. And he set himself herds of his own, and he did not set them with Laban's flocks. And so, whenever the vigorous of the flocks went into the heat, Jacob put the rods in full sight of the flocks in the troughs for them to go in heat by the rods. And for the weaklings of the flock he did not put them. And so the feeble ones went to Laban, and the vigorous ones to Jacob. And the man swelled up mightily, and he had many flocks, and female and male slaves, and camels and donkeys.